Good day, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I am a perpetual student of literature. I believe in the magic of stories. Recently, I was part of a discussion where someone asked us to name five authors who would be good for the primary, secondary, and high school students. The first five names that came to my mind, to my mouth, were Charles Dickens, Enid Blyton, J.K. Rowling, Charlotte Bronte, and Roald Dahl. And I said to myself, wait a minute, why were they all British? Why was I thinking of all the British authors? Immediately, Anita Nair, Vikram Seth, R.K. Narayan, Amitav Ghosh, all the Indian authors started rushing in. This is a common phenomena for most people who have studied, who have been brought up in a country that was formerly colonized by the British or any European country. So, I grew up in a convent school. I listened to Christian English hymns every day during the school assembly. I read stories in which the children had blonde hair, where young women rode on horses for their exercise. There were gentlemen who would fight with great valor for the English soil. I read of governesses in prim uniforms who served scones and cream and strawberries to little children who were taught at home, who would take walks in the snow and play with snowballs. My mother, armed with Kamala Das, Jawaharlal Nehru, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Tagore, and so many other writers, Indian writers, helped me to realize that black eyed people with black hair did exist in literature. So today let us talk about this idea is very lucidly, very beautifully portrayed by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian writer and she writes the dangers of a single story. In this essay, the writer starts by saying that she was born and brought up in a Nigerian university campus. Her father was a professor and her mother was an administrator. At a very young age, Chimamanda started writing and reading. Her mother says that she started reading and writing at the age of 2. So she says, I would have been maybe 4. But very early she started writing and reading. She says that all the books that she read had blonde children with blue eyes. Children who talked about the weather, who ate salted sardines, who ate apples, who went apple picking. And she had never been out of Nigeria. She had friends who went out and they ate mangoes. And they never talked about the weather because there was no need to talk about the weather. There was no snowfall. There was no changing rains. It was warm, humid. So she says that had she not come into contact with African authors, her perception of what a book is, the very thing a book would be something European, something with which she herself could never personally identify. She says that at the age of 7, she would write little booklets, which she would color with crayon and ask her mother to read it out to her. And in these books also, all the characters were again white. They were white children. She wrote of white and European people. So she says that the American and British literature opened my eyes, opened my imagination to great lengths because, of course, they were also very good authors. But here she says that Chinua Achebe and Kamara Lai, with their portraits of Africa, showed her that her kinky hair could be found in books, that her broad lips, her big eyes, they would also be found in books. Children like her existed in literature. So here if we go to Home and Exile, Chinua Achebe talks about the balance of stories. We must know everyone's story. Chinua Achebe says that if it is only the hunter who tells you the story always, you will never know the story of the lion. You must also have a chance to read the lion side of the story, not only that of the hunter. So later, she says that in her house, there was a boy who was working. His name was Fide, and her mother told her that this was a child from a very poor family. Chimamanda says that when she ate and whenever she left her food, her mother would say, "Children like Fide do not have food in their house, do not waste." So instantly in her mind, she formed a picture of this boy as someone very poor who had nothing at all. Later on, she chanced to go to his village and she saw his family. The boy's mother showed her a basket made with raffia, raw material, and then she saw that the villagers, even though they were impoverished, they had their own means of their livelihood. They were making beautiful things by weaving. They knew handicrafts. So instantly we can see that she got a new image of Fide. She then says that she moved to the United States. She went to America, and till then she had not thought of herself as African. But there she was referred to as African. People started seeing her. It was like she had to choose a side, black or white, and slowly she started identifying with African. Initially, she felt that it was ridiculous that these people who met her assumed the entire Africa to be a single space. So, but then soon she started understanding their viewpoint. She says that her roommate asked her to share some music with her, and when she said that she had the albums of Mariah Carey, the roommate was astonished. She wanted to know why she was not listening to tribal music. She thought that such a person who had come from Nigeria wouldn't know good English, and this roommate was quite astonished to see that English is the official language of Nigeria. When the author tells her roommate that yes, English is the official language, it is the language in which I learned and I was brought up in, her roommate is quite amazed. She also says that while doing creative writing, she portrayed her people as black people who had jobs, who were middle class, who had the problems as well as the benefits of being middle class people. Her professor told her that this was not authentic. He said, if you are writing about African people, you ought to make them poor. You cannot have them educated, holding good jobs. In short, he did not want to see people like himself in her stories. So then she says that if I too were like them, if I were ignorant of my country, if my perception of Africa was only those beautiful, colorful pictures of huge desert lands, lions, giraffes, zebras, and wild tribal people, she too would have thought the same. She would have seen Africans as people who had no access to education, who were waiting there to be saved by the white man who comes along. So there she realized why her roommate was looking at her in a patronizing, very, in a way that as if she were pitying her for her background. So here she says that stereotyping will limit our understanding of the world. We always hear such and such a nation will behave in such a way, or a people of a particular religion will only do this, such and such a job. So, here what she says is, she quotes Chinua Achebe and says there should be a balance of stories. If I was brought up reading British books or American books, there is nothing wrong with that. But I must have a chance to see the writings of the people from where I come from. So you must know, not only in books, people should have access to knowledge about various voices from all over the world. That is what Chinua Achebe says by balance of stories. If you read one story from one author about a particular incident, you must also have access to what he writes about, to those people about whom he writes. Let those people themselves speak out. Let everyone's voice be heard. Then there is a balance. Here, the problem with stereotyping is that it is not that stereotyping is wrong. Quite often, stereotypes may be right, but it is not the whole truth. By calling it, if you know only that story, you know only one story of those people. Here, Adichie also says that when she says that by telling only certain experiences of a person, you're flattening out the entirety of that person. You're seeing only one self, one particular side of that character. She said that she was told that a writer should have a lot of heartbreak, a lot of agony in their life. They should have an unpleasant childhood from which to draw on sad experiences. But she says that initially she even thought of inventing an unhappy childhood. But she says, no, I had a beautiful childhood. My parents loved me. They brought me up well. They gave me education. It does not mean that just to be a good author, one should be sad. But then she says at the same time, I also had grandfathers who lived in refugee camps. I also had a cousin who died in an airplane crash because of the government, because of the situation in Nigeria, where the person was not able to receive medical aid or help. So all of us are like that. We all have darker moments in our life as well as lighter moments. And it is in this entirety that our story is made of. If we only look at the negative points in a person's life, we are limiting that person. We are flattening the experiences of his life. So it is up to each of us to know all the stories, to listen to every voice that you can, so that you know you do not fall in the trap of the danger of a single story. Thank you.